Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our career exploration series, What Can I Do with Environmental Studies major? We're going to let the panelists introduce themselves and tell you a little bit about their background. That should take some time, and then we're going to open up the floor for questions. So, yeah, have a good time.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Bridget Sitzer. Can you all hear me? All right. Hey, Lindsay. So I graduated from St. Ben's in 2008 with an environmental studies major and a political science minor. In terms of how I first got interested in environmental studies, I guess I can trace it back to really early on in my life. First grade, we turned our classroom into a rainforest, and then all of the proceeds went to the Amazon. And so I started to get really passionate about that, I guess, and that turned into just really an eagerness to learn more about conservation and preservation. And so at St. Ben St. John's, at first I thought for sure I would go into the nonprofit side of things, but as a senior I realized, okay, well, if everyone seems to be most upset about, I guess, the damage that corporations do, then I want to see environmental studies from that side of things. So I applied to a couple different larger corporations and was hired by Target, headquarters in downtown Minneapolis, and I was a business analyst, senior business analyst, and then most recently a product manager. And I got to do a lot of interesting things with sustainability and just seeing, large-scale transportation issues and, factory compliance issues, and try to tackle things from that angle. And I can talk more about that as we go on. But now I actually work in admission and marketing here at St. Ben St. John's.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashley Verburg. I'm a 2010 graduate from St. Ben's, and I first have to thank you all for coming out tonight. This is the best thing you can do during your time at St. Ben St. John's, among other things. I'm a huge St. Ben St. John's fan, and I know there's a lot of good events going on every week here, so thank you for taking the time to come out. This will be highly beneficial for you, and we hope to be able to provide some excellent insight that will help you choose your path here. I was an environmental studies and French minor, environmental studies major, and I got interested, I think I just fell into the major more so than anything else. I started off as a biochemistry major on the pre-med track, like many students coming into school like St. Ben St. John's. And it wasn't until my junior year, after I had studied abroad in France with Jean Levine, who I'm sure many of you have had her as a professor, was my program leader, and she really was a great inspiration for me. I had taken her Intro to Environmental Studies class, and I decided to take the leap and committed myself to the major, and really there wasn't much turning back for me. I had always had an interest in urban and regional planning, so I worked for a nonprofit called Envision Minnesota for one summer as a Jackson Fellow here at St. Ben's, and that was a fantastic experience and introduction into the nonprofit sector. From there, I graduated in 2010 and wanted to get more experience working hands-on with actual planners to decide whether or not I wanted to go to planning school. I was looking at the Humphrey Institute at the University of Minnesota and decided that it would be important for me to really narrow down if I wanted to make that investment into higher education. And so I worked for Metro Transit, the Metropolitan Council in the Twin Cities, with their service development office as a transitway planner, working on planning for bus and light rail and commuter rail enhancements in the Twin Cities. I really liked it, but needed a break, so I actually moved to France and taught English on the Riviera for 7 months. After which I came back, and so as you can tell, I kind of bounced around a little bit. So if anybody has a diverse set of interests, I can certainly respond to those eclectic tastes as well. But now I'm working for a consulting firm in the Twin Cities called Kimley-Horn and Associates. I absolutely love it. I am a planner now. No, I did not go to graduate school to be a planner. So if you have questions about graduate school, I can give you the perspective of doing the work without that higher level degree. Now I work primarily on transportation projects and with clients like MnDOT. Metro Transit is one of our major clients. And I guess if anybody's interested in planning, I can respond to those questions. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Chris Haugen. I graduated in 2009. Like Bridget, I have an environmental studies major and then a political science minor. I came into St. John's thinking I was going to be a bio major, and then quickly realized that was not the path for me. So I started kind of taking some more of the humanities, and I kind of fell into environmental studies because I took Derek's U.S. history course my fall of freshman year, and Derek was awesome. So I started taking more classes with him, and then continued with bio, and political science kind of fit in with the major at the time, so I took a few classes in that. And I guess I kind of started on my career path probably my junior year of high school. I started working outside doing Treecare for a local company in Twin Cities, and I kind of started doing that as a nice way to make money in the summers. And I really started to realize that I liked working outside. I liked being active, but I liked kind of helping the environment, helping trees. So then after I graduated, I worked for another tree care company in Minneapolis, kind of doing chemical applications for Dutch elm disease and oak wilt. And then I moved around in the company, and now in my current position, I am I develop chemicals, primarily fungicides and insecticides for plant health care. And I travel the country setting up research trials, analyzing trials, and then developing products. And I am currently going to school part-time at the University of Minnesota for a master's in plant pathology. And that kind of takes me to today. I'm doing that school and work thing. And I'd say enjoy undergrad while it lasts, because I can remember saying to my roommates, oh, it's going to be great once you're done with college. You come home from work, you're done, you don't have anything to do. But that is so not the case. So enjoy college while it lasts.
My name is Cristina Walsh, and I am actually a graduate from the University of Illinois, but I work with Ashley, so I'm here to give you another perspective. And I graduated with a degree in natural resources and environmental science from U of I, like I mentioned, and let's see, so I just graduated in May of this past year, so 2011. And in college, I worked summers in wetland restoration. And then I spent a semester studying tropical rainforest management in Australia, where we lived in a cabin in the rainforest for that semester, so that was also very fun. And then I graduated, and now I work with Ashley at Kimley-Horn & Associates in the Twin Cities as a wetland delineator and environmental scientist. So what I do is I work a lot with NEPA documentation, so when our company has a big project or even a small project, there's all these steps that you have to take in order to not get sued, basically. And so I get to cover some of that, and then with the wetland delineation part, I get to work outside a lot, go out into the field, and determine how much impact a roadway project or any kind of project we have, how much impact there is to wetlands, and then account for mitigation and work on permitting and things like that. So that is what I do.
Kind of saying what Ashley was saying before, thank you very much, you guys, for coming out. This is probably really important for you guys. Also, another thing too, career fairs, that's important too. If you guys can make it out to that, that'd be great for you guys as well as the companies that are out there. I'm Edie Koloski. I graduated with an environmental studies major last year and a chemistry minor. And my environmental studies, the reason why I became interested in it was mostly, I want to say that in high school I had a strong ethic. I believe that a lot of things should be, the environment should be taken care of sustainably. I remember going to different urban volunteer work and seeing how inner city development was not very good for either the environment or people. And I also had in high school very strong science motivation to learn about scientific things. I took calculus, chemistry, physics. And when I came here, I thought, I'm going to be in chemistry and I'm going to do something for the world. Well, as I got through chemistry my first 2 years, I just felt like that wasn't for me. And in taking Intro to Environmental Studies my freshman year. I remember reading a book named Ishmael. I don't know if, I know some of you probably have already read it, but Ishmael was all about the ethic of why we should take care of our environment. It's a conversation between an ape and a person, and it was really strong for me. From that point on, I knew I was going to be an environmental studies major, and I didn't know if I was going to be a chemistry major, and then finally I decided I'm going to be a chemistry minor. Where I am right now is I work for the USDA-ARS in their soil science division. And the way I kind of got there was my fall of my senior year, fall 2010. I met Kurt Spokus, who's one of the soil scientists at the USDA-ARS, at a career fair, the government career fair actually in the cities. And in talking with him, he had a very similar interest to me about taking care of the environment, specifically kind of like reducing nutrient nutrient loads into the rivers, local waterways, and we kind of hit it off at the career fair. And since at that point, I kept in contact with him over the rest of the semester, and I actually got into a position where I was actually doing a research project for him my last semester here. So after that, he said, you know, this is great work. He hired me then. So that's where I am right now, and I work in a lab setting. And basically that entails doing sample preparation, data analysis, running instruments, going out to the field, collecting samples, which is fun, and then working back in the lab. So that's my kind of background. So if we'll open this up to questions now. Lindsay.
The question was, we're going to be repeating questions for our viewers on St. Ben, St. John's Television. The question was, is the job that we're doing now the same that we originally envisioned for ourselves when we chose the environmental studies major? Who would like to take a shot at that?
My answer is pretty simple in that it was. I had an interest in wetlands, and I hoped that I would find a job as a wetland delineator, and I have been lucky enough to do so.
I'll take a swing at it as well. The answer for me is also it was. And I think, how many people would say it was? Anybody else? Partially?
Partially.
Partially? What I found in my classmates and colleagues and people like Cristina who I've met who have studied the environment in college is that it's a major that draws really passionate people that stand for something. And I think when you can bring that passion into your work, there's really no stopping you. So I knew that I always wanted to be involved in planning in some respect. And I don't know if I'll be in this career for the rest of my life, like many of us of our generation. But there are a lot of opportunities in the environmental field right now, especially if you're creative and looking outside of the box. You may not know as a first year or sophomore student what job you want to be in as an environmental studies major, and that job may not exist right now because we're encountering new problems every single day. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, my answer is also simple, no. It's nothing like what I expected to be doing when I was in undergrad. But I think that's the beauty of environmental studies. It's one of those few majors that really encompasses so much of what liberal arts has to offer. So you have English, you have ethics, you have theology, you have political science. You look at it from a business perspective. And because of that, you do have the ability to tailor your future in so many different directions. Myself, I mean, you don't have to be a management major to get hired at a Fortune 30 company. You know, companies, grad schools, they're looking at environmental studies, liberal arts in general, at the way that you are able to think critically, speak, conduct yourself. And environmental studies, I think, does an amazing job of developing students to do just that. I guess I am still very passionate about environmental studies, so don't take my, fact that no, I'm not doing something with it directly to be anything against that. But yeah, like you said, someday, sure. But I know that I have the skills and the background and enough of a diverse knowledge base to know where my passions lie, and maybe it's grad school or maybe it's switching careers down the road, but I feel very prepared.
My answer to that is, as I said before, partially. When I came in here, I kind of envisioned myself kind of going the chemistry route, making a chemical that can be, a plastic, a metal, but highly biodegradable and works for everything. I mean, as is kind of becoming apparent now that there's no such thing as that. But that's what I was hoping to kind of like work in the lab setting and kind of see myself as a scientist working with chemistry. And when I started kind of like experiencing that here at St. John, St. Ben's, I love chemistry. I love the theoretical parts. But when it comes to the tedious aspects of like sitting in front of a little lab bench on a weigh scale and you're just kind of doing something really small and then you wait 4 hours for the reaction to complete, I couldn't see myself doing that for the rest of my life. And right now where I am, I'm in a laboratory setting, and there are times where I spend, I think the longest assignment I've had where it was just very tedious was 2 weeks, and I was ball milling. Basically, you put into these chambers little soil samples, and you pulverize it. It takes about 5 minutes for it to shake back and forth like a little lead bead, really hard. And basically, you're sitting at the desk, and you're just letting it go, and it's just like after 3 or 4 samples, just like, I want to go to sleep right now. But I get a change of pace at least, most of the time, every day. There's a different experiment that needs to be done, not done, but needs to be reanalyzed, or we go out into the field. And it's just, for me, that's exactly kind of where I want to be. And I'm very happy now knowing more, kind of like getting the experience I did here, because then I could kind of choose my direction a little bit when I was graduating.
When I graduated, I really wasn't sure what I wanted. I kind of graduated, I was like, well, I need a job. I got to have something to do with my time. And I think what I really got out of my experience here was the ability to think critically, creativity, reading, writing. You can always be taught how to do something, but it's the process that you take to get there to solve problems. That's what I really got from my experience here, and that's what I think really sets the environmental studies major apart from just having a degree in chemistry or biology. Those are just facts. Those are things you can just learn from a textbook, which most employers can teach you, or you go to graduate school, but they can't teach you how to think of a new way to do something. They can't teach those skills. So if you have them already, you're one step ahead of the game. And actually, when I interviewed for going to graduate school, my advisor said, if you didn't graduate with a Bachelor of Arts, I wouldn't have taken you on, because he's tired of having graduate students that know facts. They know how to read something and just regurgitate facts, but they can't write, they can't read, they can't create new ways of solving problems. So I think that's what's really important. I'll start. Definitely. Hindsight's 2020. If I'd gone back, I really wish I would have taken some of my undergraduate classes in like calculus and statistics, so I didn't have to take them in graduate school. But beyond that, I definitely would have been an environmental studies major, and it's kind of tough to say, like, it it would have been nice to have, worked with maybe someone on a faculty member doing some of their research projects. But if you don't really know what you're going to do, just dabble in a little bit of everything. Don't take the same summer job, back in your hometown doing the same thing for 4 years in a row if you're not sure what you want to do. Take advantage of the internships, go to Washington, D.C., or go somewhere else, work with the Forest Service. Just get out there and try something new every year. That's what I would have done differently.
There is one thing I've talked with different professors. Oh, I forgot the thing I forgot to mention. The USDA-ARS labs are actually affiliated with the University of Minnesota, so our labs are on the St. Paul campus for the University of Minnesota. So we actually work together a lot with different professors from different departments because they either have an instrument we need or we're doing research that's similar with them. But in talking with a lot of different people, either students or lab workers or even professors about this, I do notice that one thing in the environmental field that is a lot of time very essential to getting a job even after grad school is kind of skills. And like if you can take any classes that give you a skill, one that a lot of people like is GIS. It might not be the most fun class to be taking because I know it's computer related and you got to sit down and make sure you make a map perfectly. But it's when people see it on your resume, they say, oh, GIS. That's something that we can definitely hire you for. And then it's from knowing that information that you can then go on to something that you're more into. But it's just things that you can put on your resume that give you a step in the door and kind of put you above the rest. And I feel like St. John's, St. Ben's, definitely, as Chris said, we have a BA. A lot of people look at it. I mean, other students from other colleges might be saying a BS, oh, BA is no difference. But, I mean, professors know it. I mean, when they hire us, they're like, well, we know you have experience, a little bit broader experience, more range of just knowledge, I would say. So, yeah.
And I knew from the beginning that I didn't want to do something with hard sciences. So for me, I would say that I did do everything, looking back even, that I wanted to or could have done. I worked for Derek Larson for a summer in the Environmental Studies Department and Mike Ross, and got to do some research and help Derek turn his dissertation into a book, which was pretty cool. And then I interned for kind of the state of Minnesota in conjunction with the DNR and Bemidji State University to conduct a willingness to pay survey to figure out how much the citizens of Minnesota in distinct parts of the state would be willing to pay to clean up the water quality of our state. So I guess for me, I always knew it would be more of the social science side of things for me, or the political or business side of things, but I think that's still a great question because you don't necessarily know that unless you try to diversify your experience now to really, just like you're doing with an environmental studies major, is taking a variety of classes, a variety of internships, summer jobs.
Absolutely. We don't all have to answer each question, but I just have to echo what Ed said. And Cristina and I, you might have seen us smiling at one another when he mentioned GIS, but it is so true. If you have an opportunity to take a GIS class, take it. As an environmental studies major, you never know when it's going to come into play. And I will tell you, I hated it. And I do GIS now probably once a week. And Cristina came into our company. Actually, we both applied for the same job, and they brought us both on. And they brought Cristina on as the GIS expert. And I think she can maybe comment to that a little bit more, but it is really valuable to have, even if it's just one semester of a skill-based class, take advantage. And to add on to that, if you can each go back to your room tonight and look at your resume, because I know you all have one already formatted, right? And look at that, and then add another list to utilize when you reformat your resume, because you'll do that lots in your years to come, I can guarantee that. And write down all of your skills, and think creatively as you write down your skills. It may be something as obvious as GIS or as obvious as wetlands delineation or research, but it might be something else like public involvement. That's really where I got my foot in the door, even with Kimley-Horn, is having this public involvement background of facilitation and meeting organization. I worked for events on campus here, and who would have thought that that would have come in handy in a career as a consultant, as a transportation planner, but it certainly has, and it's something that you better believe I was marketing. So looking at those skills to complement your liberal arts degree will be key as you move forward. Did anybody else have fun after graduating? No,
I did.
because I can comment to that. And I moved to France, which is, I was on the Riviera last year this time on a beach. I mean, I recommend it. If it's something, I mean, I wasn't like roller skating around delivering pizzas, which that would be really fun, but it wouldn't necessarily have value. Instead, I was doing something that challenged me and was a way for me to demonstrate to a future employer that I was willing to take risk and I was willing to put myself in uncomfortable positions. So in that respect, definitely, the more you can diversify your experience, the more you can challenge yourself, I recommend it.
And I think it's all about how you spin your experience later on. I mean, you could be delivering pizzas on roller skates and probably find a great way to, spin it towards customer service or, whatever. And I don't know what your ultimate goal is in the next couple of years, but I don't know. For me, I personally felt pressured, I guess, to jump right in and earn a salary, and I don't regret that at all. But at the same time, if that's not what you're feeling the need to do, then don't. I don't know.
Yeah, just a quick word on that. I think it's all dependent too on who you are, your kind of like your situation after graduation. If you feel like you want more experience, I say definitely go for it. For me, it's like I think I would have gone to a couple different internships actually, because I was looking at that. I didn't know I was going to have the USDA job because they have to wait until they get their funding before they can actually officially say we've hired you. And I was willing to do no non-pay internships just because water testing, water quality, something like that, anywhere around the cities. And that would have been something that would have given me experience. Do I like doing this type thing?
And I just want to add one disclaimer. When I moved back from France, it took me 6 months to find my current job. And so if you would have asked me that question maybe 7 months ago, I probably would have said, no, don't do it. But in the end, as long as you have faith and you really believe in yourself, I mean, like faith in yourself, you can have that kind of faith too. But probably both will be helpful, or whatever. Anyways, so sorry. So yes, I recommend having fun if that's something that you think you need.
As I think I'm the most recent, well, Ashley and but I graduated in just this past May, and my job search started in February and was ridiculously persistent. Like, I applied to 6 different places a week up until I got this job, which I started actually in October. So my advice would be persistent for sure, but I initially was applying to just the things I wanted to do, like wetland delineation. That's it. But obviously with the economy and everything, you have to be a little flexible. And then if you look into different things, like even just looking at job postings on these websites like Indeed.com and things like that, it can help to, if you can imagine yourself in that job and see sort of like different aspects. Maybe like for me, it was pretty much focused in the environmental realm, but you can look at different, just different potential opportunities and go for everything would be my advice. Because something then will align.
And actually, one more thing that's kind of related to this. 2 years ago at the Career Expo, I got to meet with John Peichel, who is the general manager of General Motors Water Quality Science Division. And basically, he told me about how he kind of went through this whole thing about he had graduated with a physics major from here, then was able to get into a sales position with General Electric. Yep. And then from there, he was able to kind of rise up in the ranks and kind of become the general manager of the division. Well, what he told me is that one of the best things that he figured out from actually a person before him that he had been talking with was there's like a national library of like businesses, and that every business, they either separate in type of business or they separate in different ways. But he said that if you're interested in a certain field, go to that place and it'll give you a whole bunch of phone numbers of different companies that are like that. And he said what he did when he was actually doing because what he was selling was water quality for like waste management facilities, water quality tools, instruments, and he said that basically he would call people up from these companies and ask them, hey, just give me a couple seconds of your, do you have a couple seconds of your time? Can we talk about what you do? And he would figure out everything that is kind of like their jargon, their lingo, and then when he would actually sell, he would go back to the same companies and be like, oh, my name is John Peichel, and I can sell you this, and be able to keep up with them on their conversational topics. And he also said that that's how he has told other people to kind of like, if you're interested in a field, call up a company that you're interested in, talk to someone, and that does more than just figure out what it's like to work there, but it gives you a name, maybe a name they'll remember when they're hiring. They're like, this person was interested in what I was doing, and I have to hire someone. Well, if you put an application in, they're more likely to hire you. It's networking. So that may be one thing that you can help out. You can do. That's what helped me out with Kurt's focus. So, yeah, sorry.
I would recommend if there's a field you want to be in, there's always some sort of professional association that's associated with it. Go to their local chapter meetings or a local convention and go there, because most people that make decisions within companies go to those. They don't go to job fairs. Hiring managers go there, and that way you can really target your job search to really who you want to work for. And that's how I got my job. I went to 2 or 3 local sort of chapter meetings, started just doing the networking thing, kind of explained what I was about, and really you're selling yourself. You are the product. Sell the value you would bring to their company, and just be annoying. And don't send emails to people, call them, because emails are easy to ignore, but phone calls, if you call them and keep calling, they will take your call eventually. That's my recommendation.
I agree, and I also would add to that, you need to stalk people. Seriously, LinkedIn, Facebook, Google search, whatever it is, if you can get a name and stalk that person, you're in good shape. I'm in my current position today because I kept in with Metro Transit even while I was in France and maintained my network. And when I came back, they were kicking off a study that I had done the ground research for, and went to their first major stakeholder engagement meeting where my boss's boss was actually at that meeting. I didn't meet him, but I was still present, taking notes, engaged. I looked the part. I wasn't the intern anymore, but I was basically pretending to be. And there was a man by the name of Edgar Torres who was with our company, but he's from San Diego. And later on, I realized, okay, Edgar Torres, he's with Kimley-Horn. I don't really know much about this. It wasn't really on my radar. I was looking at a lot of nonprofits. Next thing you know, this position opens up at Kimley-Horn. And I thought, what is that name? And I thought, oh, wait, I wrote it down. I was taking notes. I was playing the part. So I stalked Edgar Torres, and it worked. LinkedIn came through. I befriended him. He accepted me. I sent him a message. He gave me a call. Next thing you know, I had Jessica Lab's name, number, and I was on the phone with her and pitching myself. And it was awkward. It is incredibly awkward to put yourself in those positions where you're dry calling someone who could be your potential employer, trying to say everything that's important and relevant about you and your experience. But do it now, and if you can start when you're in college, if you could start when you're in high school, that would have been great. But the more you can make the mistakes now while you're young, do it. I was at a presentation yesterday, and there was a guy who's in our field. He's like one of the leading engineer researchers in Paris. So I decided to go up to him after the presentation and introduce myself to him in French. And it was really embarrassing, and I'm still going, why did I do that? But I got his card. I have Michel Perron's card. So if I ever want to work in Paris, I can say, hey, I gave you my card, and have that connection. So do it now. Make the mistakes now. It'll definitely serve you.
And there's a lot that you can take advantage of right here at St. Ben, St. John's. When I was preparing for interviewing and applying to Target, I did a lot of mock interviewing here at Career Services. Critique, don't be afraid to have your resume critiqued now. I know Ashley kind of hinted before, but if you don't have a resume already, start one. It's one of those things that you can just spend endless hours on. But it's all about, I think, how you spin your experience, and that's where I think Career Services can really come into play too, and say, okay, why don't you think about rephrasing X, Y, and Z, and before you know it, you have your masterpiece that helps you become extremely marketable. Question?
I can speak to environmental education, but not necessarily in the education system. But I'll give you some tips in that respect. There's a lot of environmental education going across the state that's not occurring in K-12 education. The MPCA, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, has a full environmental education division. The DNR does environmental education. I'm sure there's other divisions that do environmental education. And not only that, but private schools, which tend to hire a lot of people that have private liberal arts degrees, you don't have to have your teaching degree to get your foot in the door there. And they're often looking for young teachers that have a very diverse perspective. So those are ways to get around having the traditional teaching degree. There are opportunities, the name is forgetting me, but I can look in my Rolodex if you talk to me after, of different organizations in the St. Cloud area that do environmental education for elementary school students. And the best thing you have here at St. John's and St. Ben's is the Arboretum. They hire fellows right out of school to do environmental education, and that would be a fantastic resource. Tom Kroll, he has great connections within the area and could probably set you up with your specific resources. Does that answer your question?
I know of two grads, one from my class, Matt, I forgot what his last name, Lindsay might remember, but in our thesis. Matt, right? Well, I can find that out. And then there's a John Smith. I know he's in the Department of Education right now. And maybe if you want to, you could go to Career Resources and see if they can look them up. Maybe you could get in contact with them, because they'd be, since they are in the educational field, they would be perfect to talk to. Go for it. One way to do it, well, not just the USDA, but any other company, maybe even the University of Minnesota, go onto their websites and look up the different researchers specifically, like find out their names, look at their fields, and the best thing, as I was kind of saying before, give them a call. Be like, hey, you know, I saw that you're doing this. Could you let me know what your research is about? And most research professors would be glad to tell you anything about what they're doing because the only other people that really know what they're doing are reading their papers that they publish. So whenever, like for example, I know Kurt, we were at in Rosemont doing an expo with our research, and a Girl Scout came up to him and ended up taking half an hour of his time because she wanted to know what his biochar research was, and she ended up doing a project with him. Call people up, keep in contact, ask them what they're doing, and even, I mean, I know a lot of the researchers and lab workers that we get for the USDA actually come from the environmental science degree program at the University of Minnesota in the undergrad degree program. And a lot of them, they'll have maybe a soil science background or a little bit of hydrology, but that's their only background. They still are working for them as an intern or just as a lab worker. So talk to people, and you'd be surprised what the opportunities are just because you know them will be. So yeah.
I know Ashley can also speak to studying abroad because she clearly loves France. Oh, sorry. But definitely, if nothing else, just putting your, like, it demonstrates to potential employers that you can adapt. Obviously, my study abroad experience was a little intense, like living, you know, in a rainforest. You're obviously demonstrating you can adapt, but even if you're in more of a civilized society, just being out of your comfort zone and having to like make these new friendships and connections and stuff away from home definitely helps. And it's definitely something you can talk about in the job interviews, and it sets you apart from others in that, you know, you've had these really unique experiences that have developed who you are and what your interests were. And if you can tie back to, you know, what makes you unique in those kind of situations, it definitely helps.
I agree, and as Bridget's been saying a lot all evening, it's so much about swing, how you swing your experience. And for me, coming back and trying to convince my parents that moving to France was a good idea with all my student debt, which they finally have said was a good idea, finally, now that I have a great job with Kimley-Horn and Associates, how I pitched it was that here I was in this country that I love, France, for, you know, the cuisine and the art and the romance and the history. But I didn't say that in an interview. I said I was there because they have one of the best transportation systems in the world. And I rode the TGV, and I was on their BRT lines, and their bus brought me to school, for crying out loud. It was the best experience for an urban planner coming back and trying to shape the way that we do development in the United States as, you know, the child of Europe, you know, just a few steps behind. So that's how I swung it. Was I really there for that? Absolutely, but they also have very good cheese and wine. So I definitely recommend studying abroad.
And I know St. Ben St. John's now, too, are offering so many options to get internships on your study abroad program. So again, to a future employer, you look that much more marketable. Not only can you adapt, but you bring a global perspective that a lot of other candidates probably cannot.
Go for it, Eric.
I founded a sustainability club when I was at St. Ben, St. John's. Doesn't even have to be sustainability. You don't have to found a club, but it's just one more example that you can use to speak to in an interview, especially, even moving away from the resume. But it just foreshadows the work that you're going to be able to bring to that organization, whether it's a company or grad school, because it shows that you're determined, that you have the skills necessary to bring people together, community organize, whatever it may be in your circumstance. But I would say to take any sort of leadership opportunity that you can in undergrad, because it's gonna, again, set you apart when others are talking about classroom experience, you know, kind of boring, really, to an employer. Everybody has that. So if you can show that you've applied your leadership qualities and have a proven record, then all the better.
I'll just say networking always helps. I just went to a conference last Friday up in Duluth for something called biocoal, which is the same thing as biochar. And basically in the biochar industry, that's what we have to compete with if charcoal becomes efficiently producible. And because if farmers can buy it, so can the energy industry. But we met a lot of people there. I actually met Chris's
Former boss.
Yes.
It's a small world,
Yeah.
surprisingly small.
And it's just when you meet people, you get to make friendships, and it's like, well, I know this person from this, and I know that they have an experience here. So when you apply for a job or something, they can give you a little bit more weight for the application process.
I completely agree with all the comments that have already been made, and I would say the reason why I'm sitting here today is because of my involvement with the St. Ben Senate. Which is, you know, traditionally more of it draws more political science people, but I think it's broadened in recent years. And while I was involved in Senate, we really focused on sustainability issues and created a sustainability representative, and those were all fantastic experiences, but just being involved in a leadership position, whether that be community organizing or you know, leading a documentary to Copenhagen, if anybody's ever done that here, I don't really know. Steve Delkey. Really, anything, it's going to be tremendously helpful to you in your future career. I am a huge believer, and I know that this is kind of a weird way of spinning things, but that St. Ben, St. John's is just a microcosm of the greater so-called real world. And so if you can work well with your peers here and organize a Trailless Tuesday, I know that's highly controversial. Is Goretzky trailless yet? Yes. Woo! Okay, so congratulations to you all for that, if anybody had a hand in that, or the hydration stations, anything that you can bring into an interview or just use to enrich your, I mean, this isn't all about getting a job. It always bothers me when I hear conversations on Minnesota Public Radio about, well, we go to school to get a job. Well, we go to school to educate ourselves and to advance the human species, as far as I'm concerned, and to make this world a better place. So any of those experiences you can do here, and if you can affect your local community, you better believe you'll be able to affect the greater community once you leave St. Ben, St. John's.
Friends who have chosen to do Teach for America or things of that nature, and to employers, it's, well, again, it's not just about a job, but it is seen as very attractive because obviously it's very challenging work. You're helping the greater good, and it's basically like having a job, so it still sets you up for being very transferable and moving wherever you might want to go after that. If you want to stay and be a teacher, great. If not, it's still a very respected path that lends itself to really any, I would say, pyramid.
friend that I was working with last summer, she was in our lab, and then she ended up moving out to Seattle and working for an NGO there in a non-paid, unpaid internship. And from there, she's still working in it, but she's able to go to grad school now. And a lot of people look at unpaid internships, although it's not good right now because you're not making any money and you do have college loans to pay off. It does look good to businesses because they say, well, you're willing to put the time and effort into a job without being paid. That means that you've got motivation, you've got a passion for what you're doing. So that's one aspect that I've heard from her. Actually, I just found out today too from professors I was meeting with them.
What is it called? Environmental chemistry? Okay. Oh.
For all you young students out there, that might be something interesting.
Has anybody in here taken OChem? Ed and I are the only crazy ones. Don't do it. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, it's an option now.
Networking.
Internships.
This has been brought up a few times, I think, but it's just the diversity of experience. So I mentioned that I did wetland restoration in my summers in college, and then so I did that my freshman year summer and my sophomore year summer, and then my junior year I was like, okay, I really like this. I think this is what I want to do, but I'm gonna give something else a shot. So I did research in swamps. Well, okay, so that's kind of wetlandy, but more of maybe that's not proving my points well, but the research tract as opposed to, more of like I was in a consulting field and doing more manual things in that way. So just trying, even though I thought I knew what I wanted to do, I tried something else, and for me, it confirmed that I didn't want to do research. That wasn't for me. So even if you think you're on the right path, just, straying a little bit that could have led me in an entirely different direction, but for me, it confirmed what I thought I wanted to do. So definitely just try everything. And even, like I said, that was going into my junior year, so pretty, near to the end of my program. So there's always opportunity, and just try something else.
I would say, going back to kind of both of your questions really, but especially when you're a junior or senior and you don't know exactly what you want to do, I think it's really easy to freak out and almost just stop. It's that whole paralysis thing where you have so many decisions, so the easiest thing to do is just shut down. And I would say just don't do that, because you're never going to know in life exactly what you want to do, most likely. The majority of my colleagues currently, a lot of them have been in admission for years and years, and they still say, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. The same was true, maybe not in medicine or something extremely specific that you've had to go to school for 12 years, but the majority of people, it's just life. That's just life. You hear the real world, but it's still just 1 year away or two. It's not like this. I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say, but it's continuously gray, and so I would say that's fine. Don't let that freak you out. Just continue moving forward, and any experience, whether it's volunteering or, working as any of us have, still prepares you for maybe that next step. And you're continuously learning more about yourself as you take those challenges and next steps. So nothing that you do is going to be worse than just freezing.
And a little bit more to add on to my answer to your question. Networking is very important. When it comes to like just kind of going out to do something, for me, what really helped is going to multiple career fairs. I know the environmental career fair already passed, but if you can go to another one, just go up to a different booth and say, hey, this is who I am. There were a lot of times I would go up to a company, I didn't know who they were. And then I'd find out there's some programming company, and I'd be like, oh, well, that's nice. I'd listen to what they had to say, but my background isn't in programming. And I would just learn, for me, it was an experience to learn how to communicate with people. And then you can take that anywhere to calling people. That experience you can take to how do you talk to people when you call them up or when you talk to them face-to-face whenever you go to
Informational interview.
informational interviews. It's just those experiences, getting out there, really help you out, because then it also gives you kind of like the background of what you should do in order to make the mistakes now so you don't have to make them later type thing.
How many of you have mentors? I'm Katie's mentor in the McCarthy Center program, which is a great program. If you have any political interests, go for it. Mentorship is something I truly believe in and helps you with those doubts, because you may look at us all right now and think, oh wow, they really have it together. Their paths are so clear and they know where they're at, and gee, someday I hope to be there. Maybe not. But really, I definitely reached that point of doubt this summer when I said, what am I doing with my life? And I was applying for the most broad grouping of jobs. I was interviewing at the U of M. I was, interviewing with nonprofits, and now I'm in the private sector. I've never been in the private sector before in my life. And hindsight is 20/20, because you can basically, I guess, swing to yourself which way your path led to where you are now. But I could be telling you the same exact background for myself and be in the auto industry, or I could be delivering pizzas on roller skates probably, and maybe be able to convince you that I somehow have it together. But mentorship is huge. If you can seek out a mentor at this stage in your career as a junior or a senior, I highly recommend it. Tap into those cane files right away. Start making cold calls and reach out to people saying, hey, will you be my mentor? And do the informational interview. Katie and I had a great talk at the Egg and I at the Court International building, and I'm hoping that it's helpful to her. I know that my mentors have been incredibly, incredibly helpful to me.
Thank you all for coming. We're going to wrap up for the night. I don't know if the panelists are willing to stay for a little while, but if you have any individual questions that didn't get answered, if they're willing, you can always pop by and ask them. Thank you so much for attending, and I hope everyone has a great night.